All right. We have another Meta Performance podcast. Being Meta, I'm with Meta co-founder Mike Seiler. We're going to try to keep him quiet for a few minutes over here. Good luck to me trying to make that happen. More importantly, we have Nick Day, who is a triathlete, athlete, and founder of JGA. Doesn't roll off my tongue ever, and I've been saying it for a while now. Recruitment. How's it going?
Yeah, good, man. It's good to be here. Good to be on your show. I know you've been a guest on a couple of mine over the years. So yeah, excited to be on the other side of the lens, so to speak.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I over the years have kept I call my IG life and my LinkedIn life fairly separate. So it's interesting one of the reasons I wanted to do the podcast, with Mike and Holly was to talk about how you intermix and make it all work together. But it's interesting. I don't think a lot of people listening to this won't even know that there's another podcast that's been around for a while that you've been on, and then, and vice versa. And I think I have to make sure you will be our first non-American on here.
So, I'll take that. Happy days. Yeah. I'm recording from southwest of England in Devon. Yeah. So about 200 miles from London, although I'm in London regularly. Is there a bit of insight you might like? I went to a school called Stonehenge School, and I literally was a stone's throw away from Stonehenge. I say that because most Americans can reference, they've heard or they roughly know where Stonehenge is. That's kind of where I grew up.
Well, in Small world, where'd you just go on vacation?
We were just talking about it before we came on. My wife and I hiked at least the first half of the Cotswolds Trail. It was amazing. Anything that combines being in nature, hiking, and then ending up in a pub. I think it's got all the key ingredients.
It's having been in, I think I was telling someone because I was just over there, Nick, right, a couple weeks, for work when I saw you weirdly. I've been over there 12, 15 months of my life in the UK. And I think people think it's London, but it's actually amazing. Yeah. Like every weekend, I have a long weekend, I go somewhere different, out, on Southwest Coast Path or, north, the lakes, whatever. And there's so much great spots to see. Generally, I go, try to also catch matches with the greatest football team that there is, Nick.
Yeah, I disagree with you on the last bit as a Spurs fan, which is like they're our biggest rivals. But I live near Dartmoor, so if anyone's listening to this in the US and they're not sure where to go, they want to go somewhere different in the UK, somewhere unbelievably beautiful, just Google Dartmoor, Google Widdicombe in the Moor, and it's one of the most beautiful places in the whole of England. Very historic, beautiful countryside, great climbs, amazing treks, and great pubs. So it has a bit of everything.
Pretty sure the UK in general, just great pubs. And before we get to the bio, I would say one of the first races, the Hever Castle race down.
I do.
It was one of my great introductions to UK triathlon because the pre-race, basically all the directions were referencing pubs that you make turns at on the bike. And I'm like, that's not actually helpful because there's pubs everywhere. But that was how they referenced landmarks, was by pub.
Yeah, sounds about right. It's where you get the most support, though, you see. Everyone's sat outside cheering as you go through, depending on the weather.
So give us your background. So, about the business you have and then a little bit of your athletic background.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a recruiter by trade. I actually studied theatre at university 25 years ago. Came out with a huge amount of university debt, like significant amount, and needed a job in sales. And I thought, I need a job that involves people, puts me in control of my own future. So I ended up in recruitment and for my sins, payroll recruitment of all industries. And I've been in that industry ever since. So payroll, HR, reward, kind of my three kind of niches or niches, I should say, for the US audience. But I've been in that industry ever since, for 23 years now. Started with another firm, left in 2008 to launch my own firm, which is JGA Recruitment. So we're now leaders in the UK, and we've launched in the US as well as the first agency ever to launch in the US that focuses specifically on payroll tech and HR tech and payroll positions. So that's been an exciting journey. And we recruit across the globe, all levels of the market, not just the administrative roles, the transaction roles, but right into payroll product, payroll development, payroll analytics, and same on the HR side as well. I mean, payroll is a larger side of our business than HR, so I tend to navigate more towards that when I talk about it, but we've got both sides of the business. What else? I'm a qualified executive coach. So I've got another business called T4M Coaching, which is, again, working with executives, working with athletes, Olympic coaches even, and coaching them to help them sort of unlock the barriers and obstacles in their lives to achieve success. I've got 3 podcast shows, and Sean, you've been a guest on, I think, 2 of them now. I've got the Payroll podcast, the HR&D podcast, and the Mindful Paths podcast. So 3 different disciplines, which really help support the recruitment work that I do. And athletically, I mean, I'll give anything a go. I think we're quite similar like that. I was quite an accomplished obstacle race athlete, which actually will probably be more recognized in the US than it is in the UK. So I've been to the US for the World Championships a couple of times, doing mad sort of obstacle type races, Spartan races, tough guy races, things like that. In 2016, I was in my age group. I became third at the World Championships. So that's kind of my best result, if you like. I've won a few Spartan races and things over the years. I've raced against US names like Hunter McIntyre and people like that in the past. People might know him. He's been over to the UK. So I've been in those kind of races back in the day. And then I left obstacle course racing to go back to triathlon. I used to be a triathlete many years ago, and I went back to triathlon back in 2017, 2018. So I've been doing the Ironman circuit since. Actually, my last race competitively was probably in the US. I went over to Ohio for the 70.3 World Championships, which was a great experience. But I play football, paddle, golf. You give me a sport, a racket, a ball, and I'm off. So yeah, I'm quite big into my sports, and a big Spurs fan, or Tottenham Hotspur fan, and of course Arsenal are our biggest rivals. That's probably a bit of a whistle stop.
Do you want to take any sidebar to talk about where they are in the table right now?
Rather not for a minute. It's not going well for us. It's going very well for you.
I didn't know. I was going to give you your moment if you wanted to chat.
No, you're okay. You're okay.
Yeah.
We'll leave it for now.
We did, so people, if you're watching or listening, I had it going the other way, but in retrospect, I should have turned it the other way so that you can see the giant Arsenal flag and the stuff in the background, the whole podcast. That would have been great.
I may have been ill. I'd have developed a very quick cold and I'd have to come back another time.
So we do a speed round and then we'll kind of jump in and talk about how you get it all done. So are you a coffee or tea person?
Definitely coffee. I'm on about coffee number 5 already. Yeah. I have 3 coffee makers in my house. There you go.
All right.
Okay.
It's a man after my own heart.
It's not part of the speed round. Are they drip, pour over, or you press?
Oh, so they're bean to, well, one of them is I probably shouldn't have them, the old pods, and the other 2 are bean to cup.
Okay. Your favorite race event in the past, knowing you've done different types?
The best has got to be coming third in the World Championships in the obstacle course racing World Champs. That was in Canada, in the Blue Mountains of Canada. So yeah, that's got to be the main race. Although the World Champs was pretty special over in Ohio, to be fair.
Clear or mirrored goggles?
Clear.
Okay. Your favorite track workout?
Ooh. I like the fartlek sessions. For those not familiar, you change the distances, you go all out, you break, you go slower, mix it up. Probably back to the obstacle course routes. I like to go even further and mix up the terrain as well. So sometimes I'll do certain sections where I don't even touch the pavement. I have to kind of go via trees or different routes. So yeah, I'll take fartlek.
Okay. And then always interesting with someone not here, are you chunky or creamy peanut butter?
I can't stand peanut butter. You know what? It's probably the only food in the world I don't like. I love peanuts, but peanut butter doesn't work for me. So I'll have to say neither.
It's an interesting thing. It's so prevalent in the US. It is not very prevalent outside the US.
No.
And so when I go to the UK, here it's always like crunchy or creamy. And then it goes on to this whole brand thing that you like Mike can probably talk about it. You go and there's like 20 different types of peanut butter. Like I go to Sainsbury's or Tesco and there's a peanut butter.
Yeah. So for us, it's Marmite, right? Do you love it or hate it? Marmite. That's kind of the UK equivalent.
Oh yeah.
Or even
put me in the hate. Put me in the hate side there.
Yeah.
Marmite.
Me too.
We tried it.
Yeah. No. I think that's one of those things everyone should try once. No one should have to have twice.
No.
Yeah. It's like having Twiglets on toast. That's what I'd do it. But yeah, not for me.
So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is you founded this business. I've been able to watch it grow and see all the work you've put in. You've grown the team, you've grown the scope, you've grown everything else. And you're a very good athlete. I think one of the things I thought was funny, not funny, Michael, appreciate and others. You told me you had a bad race. I think it was in the Netherlands or somewhere, a bad Ironman. And went sub 11 on a really bad day, Mike. And so, like obviously you're putting in the time. So how do you fit it all in? Like when you think about and stay happy, I guess at the same time.
Yeah. I look at this, there's always a negotiation to be had. I think I haven't been officially diagnosed, but my wife would tell you I have an ADHD brain. So I'm always going from one thing to the next thing. I do believe that vision drives decisions. So I always have a goal. I'm very goal orientated and I have a vision of where I want to get to. So Ironman's a good example. I wanted to break the 11-hour barrier. Then I wanted to break the 10-hour barrier. And that keeps me focused and I achieve both those aims, which is great. But, when I've got a goal in my head, I'll like laser focused on achieving that specific goal. And I've always got goals. If I haven't got those, I feel a little bit lost. But I always think that you've got to be really motivated. That's why New Year's resolutions often don't work. They've got to come from somewhere inside. You've got to think, this is something I want to be part of my story. I don't want to have any regrets when that time comes. I'm on my bed and the ghosts come to visit me of the things I haven't achieved. I don't want anything to come visit me. I want to go, whenever my time comes, whenever that is, for where I am in my life in that moment, I've done all the things I said I would do, and I've done them to my best of my ability. When it comes to leadership, I think the way you do one thing is how you do everything. So that can be quite a lot for my family to absorb. My wife is the yin and yang. We are completely different. She enables me to be the person I am. She's not remotely competitive. She's very I'm not saying I'm not family orientated, but she's the rock, the foundation that allows me to do these crazy things, to go traveling, to work really hard, and we work well in that regard. Funny enough, she once said to me, wouldn't you rather be with someone who was really competitive and into the same things that you're into? And I was like, absolutely not. Be the worst thing. Can't imagine being competitive with my partner every second of the day. Like, it would never work. So, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's all I've ever known. I've just always been very focused, given everything 110%. And, I can only ever let myself down, hold myself accountable to it.
Do you take when you're laser focused? And I think for me, I have to have a mental down month or two. So post season, and, you got to be careful you don't go too down. I think I'm blessed, probably like you. And we were talking before the show about Mike. You just drop him in the middle of the woods in some nature, and he just doesn't give a shit where he's at. Yeah. He'd be happy, right? So I'll spend that period where it's not quite as laser focused while I figure stuff out and find that passion. Do you take a period to kind of reset when you set your goals and not be, because especially to be honest, as I've aged, I can't stay laser focused 12 months a year, because then when I get laser focused, I have to hammer, I have to hit my number, I have to whatever. And so mentally and physically, I can't handle that 12 months a year.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I certainly need longer times to recover. Now I'm getting older, right? And you'll understand what that's like when you're pushing the body to its limits. You need longer time to recover. I think naturally for me, again, I'll go back to the way my brain works. Probably after a time, I plateau and get bored, and that usually coincides with a natural period of recovery. So obstacle course racing, 6-7 years of going all out, and I just kind of realized I wasn't enjoying it as much anymore, and so I just pivoted and did something else. And I'm not doing Ironman this year. I just feel like I've hit most of my goals over there. I've been to the world champs. I've gone under 10 hours, and I was training thinking it's harder to get up in the mornings to do this now, because I've kind of achieved what I wanted to achieve in the sport. And it's those periods where I try and find, what am I going to do now? Like, that's a panic moment for me. It's not recovery. It's I need a goal. It's not this. It's something else. I've suddenly discovered paddle, which is taking all of my focus. I had a lesson this morning, so I'm desperately trying to get better at paddle. I'll get to a moment where I plateau and I'll suddenly do something else. It's usually those plateau moments, or I achieve a particular goal. So, I'm writing a book at the minute, or a couple of books, but when they're done, I'll have a natural plateau where I need to find something else to do. I probably should diarize in more recovery time, is probably the answer I'd give to that, Sean, and I don't. I'm not very good at it. I think a lot of us who are play all out often aren't very good at that.
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge. And I think one of the ways I've helped reframe it with the people I work with is that, whether, and you have to find out what resonates with them, whether it's, hey, this is part of your training, is taking this downtime, or it's that this is the vision. This is the goal. The goal is to recover, to, reinvest in the family or reinvest in work and let your body heal. And so if you frame that as part of the training, I think people kind of start to see like, oh, okay, there's a role for this. There's a reason to do this. I can get on board, because you're right. It is so easy just to keep grinding.
I remember reading Chrissy Wellington's book. So for those not familiar, she is an Ironman legend as a female. She won every Ironman race she ever entered as an amateur and as a pro. And she was a phenomenal athlete. Well, I remember reading her book, and in that book, she said, when I recover, I do everything 100%. So when I'm in recovery mode, I recover at 100%. Like, I don't leave the sofa. I get people to come and bring me drinks. Like, I'm now in recovery mode. I'm 100% in recovery mode. And that's always landed with me a little bit. So when I'm in a training cycle, and it's recovery day, for example, like, I fully recover. I don't take hidden little cycles or runs. I remind myself of what Chrissy Wellington used to say. But it's still a kind of an extreme. It's one side or the other. You're going all out or training, or you're going all out to do nothing. I'm not very good at that middle ground. I'll give an example. My wife won't appreciate this probably, but on our honeymoon, I can't lie on a beach and do nothing. We went to Zanzibar. It was many years ago now. I've been married 19 years next year. So 19 years ago, we went to Zanzibar, lovely, glorious beaches. And I lasted half an hour till I was bored. And while we were there on a honeymoon together, I signed up to go and do my Paddy scuba diving courses and left her for 5 days to go into the sea and learn to scuba dive. She knows what I'm like. It's very difficult for me to sit still and just, do nothing. So I have to be doing something or learning a skill and watching something that's broadening my mind in whatever way that is. So I'm reading something intellectual. I struggle with fiction. I have to be learning all the time.
It's interesting because I think for me, it's I like, you switch and find new passions. I think there was a moment for me that it became a job and not fun. It's years ago. I think, Mike, we've talked about this. There was, had been to Kona, was going to go back, and that became the mission and not so much the journey. And I failed and put all like the eggs in that basket. And I realized after I failed, like the last 4 months before that had been not fun. Mm-hmm. It had been very, and I always joke, you can not have fun at work. There's always a place to go not have fun. And so I wanted to make sure it was as fun. And I swapped to ultra running for a few years and kind of got into this mode of almost like you were like, okay, my new goal is, finish and don't die, low bar, don't care about the place. And I came back to triathlon because, it's kind of what I'm passionate about, but I needed that moment to kind of go tackle a new, refreshed goal while still being active.
Yeah, and it can creep up on you, right? Sometimes you don't realize why you're not as happy. You just realize that sometimes things just run their course, or you just need a break from them. I'll use Michael's example. So I've had periods in my life where I got into night marathons for mountain marathons. So I've done LAM and some of the dark mountain marathons where you always have as a compass. You're not allowed your phones. You got to get to certain checkpoints in certain periods of time. I did that for a number of years. Again, straight in, did all my navigational courses and qualifications because that's where I am. I've got into ultra marathons. They definitely were not for me. I ran Hadrian's Wall, which was a 70-mile ultra, and I'll never done one since, but I had to give it a go. And I think that's just, you don't always know if you're good at something and you've got a skill fit until you try it. And you don't know if you're going to enjoy it till you try it. And sometimes I need to know just to either rule it out or rule it in. And I've done a lot of those things. At the moment, I'm enjoying coaching the under-12s at Exmouth Town Football Club, which is I started as a parent and then I became, assistant coach. And typical me, rather than just be the coach on the sidelines, I've since done all of my UEFA badges. I'm up to UEFA C now. I don't need to do it. It's usually reserved for those that really want to become an academy coach. I don't. I just want to be the best coach I can be. So I tend to go that way. I'm kind of all in, but I enjoy that.
Holly calls Holly, who's on the meta team, calls them type A plus. So you're not type A, you're type A plus.
Okay.
For sure out there. For me, I think I look at people and they're just, as a statistical nerd, humans are highly, amazingly statistically predictable and individually crazy unique. And so I think finding that, for you found what works for you, and for others finding what works for them and having a core. And I think that's, if you're coaching kids or you're coaching others, that's always the cool part. Is kind of figuring out, okay, here's kind of the textbook, how this should go. And then that's not how it's going to go. You almost know that's not how it's going to go for that one individual human.
I think it's the recognition that I can't play anymore at the level of football that I'd like to. I played at a good level as a youngster. And as a dad, you get injured. It doesn't work like, your brain works, but your feet don't. But my son's into it now and thought, okay, I can give back in a slightly different way and still be involved in the sport and do something a little bit different. I think I've always been motivated. And as you know, I've been studying the psychology of fear for a number of years. And that's what my book is coming out on next year. But I think the reason I started that study is because I've always pursued the things where I think I'm scared of something or something frightens me. I kind of need to understand why. I believe my potential, or most of our potential, no matter who you are, often lives on the other side of what scares you most. A good example is I'm writing these books at the moment, but I told myself for years that I can't write a book until I've got my PhD. There was always when I do this, then I'll be good enough. When I do this, then I'll be good enough. I've had to kind of snap out of that and go, you know what? I can wait forever and give myself all the excuses for not doing something. I just want to go and do it. Not do it because I want to be famous, not do it because I want to sell thousands, but do it because inside me I'm desperate to write a book. And I've been wanting to get this book out. Get it done first and worry about the credentialing later. But it's very easy to fall behind a reason not to do something. And I think sometimes there's so many lives out there that haven't met their potential or never even tried to explore what their potential might be because, we procrastinate or we hide behind fear or whatever frightens us, or we give ourselves all these other reasons not to do something.
Yeah, there's that the arrival fallacy, and you mentioned it is when I get my PhD, then I'll be good enough to write the book, rather than just write the book.
Yeah, that's it.
Just write the book.
That's it.
And I'm glad you brought up the your study on fear, and I'd love to hear more about that. Because I've always said as a coach and talking with athletes, whether they're juniors, because I did a lot of work with junior cyclists and like you coach soccer with my kids, fear and anxiety before an event. I've always said some is good because it means you care. Like you actually give a crap about your performance, about the event, but there's a line where it's too much. And so I'd love to just hear you talk about what you've been studying and what you found, and I think it'll be super helpful for the folks that listen.
Yeah, sure. I'm a big believer that courage can be cultivated, right? So we've got to expose ourselves to fear if we want to become courageous. And I think if we never do anything that scares us, how can we ever expect to be brave? And I think a lot of people feel like they just, they get frustrated with themselves because they don't have the courage or the bravery they wish they had. But it's because they're not exposing themselves enough, in my opinion, to what makes you courageous. Ironman's a great example. A lot of people don't go straight to Ironman. They'll start with smaller triathlons. And why do we do that? It's because we want to get used to the experience. We're always going to be anxious before the first small sprint triathlon, which is a 400-meter swim. And you realize actually it wasn't so bad. So you might step up to the next level up, and do an Olympic-sized triathlon. You realize actually that's not so bad. And you keep going up through stages. I think if you go straight to an Ironman race, and people do that, and there are brave people out there, but it's going to be more daunting because you haven't cultivated the courage in the first instance to get to that arrival space. And I think you mentioned anxiety. So in my opinion, what I've discovered in my research is that fear is made up of essentially a formula or an equation, as I call it, the fear equation, which is anxiety, which is the human response. That's the sweaty palms, the racing heart rate, the nerves that we feel. That's how our body reacts to it. We've got the uncertainty. So anxiety plus uncertainty. Uncertainty is the variables we can't always control. Sometimes we can, but there's always a level of ambiguity. Can we control this? I don't know what's going to happen in the race. I'm going to grab my leg or I'm going to lose my goggles. And then there's the imagination. I think that's the multiplier for me. So I think if we have anxiety plus uncertainty multiplied by imagination, the imagination of the stories we tell ourselves, whatever that might be, because often those stories are negative stories. We go into a place of survival and we think, I'm not going to be able to achieve this thing. I'll never finish in time. They'll all laugh at me. Public speaking is a common fear that people have. And I say to people, we speak publicly every day. This is what we do. We're really familiar with how to speak publicly. What you're fearful of is the judgment, right? Or the rejection from the audience. So it's not public speaking that scares you, it's the judgment. And where does that sit? Where does that come from? And what's the imagination telling you when you're in that space and you're imagining your talk? Is that people don't understand, that you might get asked a question you don't know the answer to. And when you start to label what your fears are, actually you bring your parasympathetic system back online and it can calm your nervous system very quickly. So 50% can make you more at ease with yourself, but sometimes saying things out loud, the special forces use this, they call it cognitive reframing, labeling what it is that scares them and just reducing that fear. And the voice we say out loud is very different to the voice we hear in our heads. So again, that's why coaching works so effectively. We think we know the answers in our head until you meet with a coach and they bring something else out of you and you go, God, that sounds very different when I say it out loud. And then having a coach reflects those words back to you in a summary and go, do you realize that's how it sounded? That's where you discover insight. So for me, it's been really interesting. I'm really interested in how we react to certain situations. I had my son choke when he was 3 years old and we nearly lost him. And I think that was interesting in how I responded in that moment. I took arguably all the wrong actions. I thrust my fingers down his throat to dislodge the bit of baguette that was in there, bruised all his throat. He ended up in A&E, but I dislodged it. I remember the paramedic, first thing he said to me when he arrived on the scene was, you literally did the worst thing you could possibly have done because that could have made it go down even further. And in my head, I'm going, well, it may have been dangerous, but I got it out, right? And who knows? I understand in theory, I'm certainly not recommending other people do the same, but it's how we react in that moment. And we've got that, freeze moment or the flight or the, are we going to go and challenge it and fight for what's in front of you? So I think that probably started my fascination. And then trying to understand my own brain and why I do certain things in certain sports and I'm always pushing myself has led me on a bit of a path. But I'm certainly discovering for myself two things, I guess, that have come through my research. One is that our potential often lives on the other side of the things that scare us. And I'm not really talking about the phobias. That's a different kind of fear. I'm talking about the things that live inside us that we know we really want to do, but for whatever reason, we find a million excuses not to do it. And I think the other thing is there's a cliche, which is the fear of failure. I think a lot of people are actually fearful of success. If I do write that book and it does become a bestseller, what does that mean for me? Now I've got to stand on a stage and talk about it and really have the knowledge, and I've got to know every word in that book or whatever it might be. I think that in payroll, this is rife because payroll as an industry has predominantly been invisible for years. And now we're trying to make it visible. I call it moving from invisibility to influence, but there's a reason why it's not happening as fast as it should. And I think there's a fear around what that influence really means. If I find my voice in payroll and suddenly start amplifying the work that I do, that puts me on a different pedestal. And suddenly I've got to be visible. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really scary. So a bit of a whistle-stop tour for you, but I find the whole concept fascinating.
No, that was really helpful. And as I was doing a little research just to prep, I got certified in a mindset coaching program called the Unlifted Method. And their definition of mindset is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. Right. And as I was reading about the fear equation, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. Because it is. An event is an event. It's neither good nor bad, but it's what goes on up here and between the ears. And that's where I spend the majority of my time is working with folks. And the way the Unlifted Method works, a lot of it is getting folks to write it down, literally get those thoughts out of their head onto paper. And then to your point, label them. Is that an accurate reaction to that situation or inaccurate? Is that really true about you or not? And then you can just see the light bulbs go on as they realize it's just this movie that's playing on infinite loop in our brains.
Yeah, it is.
Well, what is failure? I mean, I think also they see it very binary, right? And so, and at one small point in time is failure. So, someone signs up for a half Ironman right away and they're like, well, what if I don't finish? So I failed. I'm like, no, like your journey is to finish a half Ironman. You might not finish that one, but you'll learn and you'll certainly go farther than if you do the sprint trial. Like if that's what you want to do, it's a learning coachable moment thing. And it's just part of the journey. And so they see it very black and white in my mind. And it's when you tackle ultras. And I think one of the big advantages for people who've done ultra or endurance sports is you do it long enough, you will fail. Like you're going to DNF somewhere. You're going to find a limit that whatever's going on, you just can't do. And it really brings you back to but I woke up the next day. Like, hey man, right. I learned from that. Like, actually it's not that bad. And I usually joke with people, and you guys haven't been around sports, the only people, to your point, Nick, I think a lot of people are worried about the public perception. Well, if I don't finish that race or whatever. And I said, there's really only two buckets of people, if you don't finish a race. There's people who are athletes and they'll be empathetic and understand and know then that was part of it. They're the people you really should care about because they have done this stuff. And then the other people you just shouldn't give a shit about because they don't know. They're not out there. They haven't done it. They haven't been there. Every endurance race or even a, short triathlon, there are a lot of questionable moments and life choices you make along those, a series of small life choices. Yeah.
I mean, every Ironman race or long distance ultra endurance race, you'll have that conversation in your mind of why am I doing this? You have to be clear on your why it's important. And, how am I going to finish in that particular time? But you could be doing couch to 5K. You'll still have those same conversations. It depends on where you are in that level. You said, it's win and learn, not win and lose. And I'm one thing I'm really passionate about is the acronym FAIL, which is first attempt in learning. Change it around. This is my first attempt in learning. This is what I'm discovering on that journey, right? Okay, I haven't achieved my outcome yet, and maybe I'll never will because I've discovered this about myself, and I don't want to either continue on that journey anymore because I didn't like it, or I want to try and do something else, and all of those things are fine. I think even when we're talking about getting on stage, I was given some advice, and apologies, I can't remember who it was that gave it to me, but it's always stuck with me, the advice itself. Because when you're on stage, you get a lot of people that show other people's quotes, or they go on and they're petrified about being wrong or saying the wrong thing or whatever. And someone said to me, Nick, when you go on stage, just remember, you're not there to be right or wrong. You're there to be you. And people don't have to like what you have to say. They don't have to agree with you. But the reason you're being paid or the reason you've been asked to get onto that stage and talk is people are interested in your view. If you just give generic views, if I give Sean's view, I give Michael's view or someone else's view with your quotes behind me, they can read that in a book or they can get anyone to go on stage and become a parrot. What do you think? And they don't have to agree. That's the beauty of public speaking. And I think when you take that fear away of going, it doesn't matter. The whole room doesn't have to agree with my way of thinking. It's just an opinion. If it aligns with you, fantastic. If it doesn't, that's equally fantastic. What I want you to do is if it doesn't align with you, it's still making you think in one way or another. And you'll have all the reasons why it doesn't align, why you don't agree. Great. It's getting you thinking. That's why I'm on stage to talk. And I think that once you discover that, think about it in terms of the fear equation, takes away a lot of the uncertainty, which is one of the variables in the equation. If we can change the way we think, then great. If we can change our imagination, great. But if we can just move one of those variables, for me in that instance, it would be remove the uncertainty of how I'm going to perform. Great. And suddenly it's just a little bit easier. I'll still be anxious. It's very hard to remove anxiety. I'll still get sweaty and nervous and my heart will go a little bit faster. But hey, you know what? I'm not as uncertain as I was now because not everyone in the room has to agree with what I've got to say. But the organizer want me to give my view and I'll give it.
I'm pretty sure, Nick, the only reason you guys, I get invited to go places are for two reasons. It's to make all the other presenters look good and make anyone else who's smart realize they can also do it too. Like that's literally my lot in life when I go. But I kind of lean into that a little bit, and that's how you kind of talk yourself to it. Like, it's fine. I'm with you. Like, I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say, and I hope some people disagree. I mean, those are the ones you remember.
I think a lot of mental health, fear, procrastination sits when we're worried about what other people think. But I would argue straight away, you're living a life outside of your virtues or you're out of alignment with yourself. Like, why do you want to do it? If you're at the start of an Ironman race and you realize that you've done this because you committed to everyone else on social media you were going to do it, but actually you just absolutely don't want to do it, don't do it. Like, don't be fearful of the judgment that brings. There'll be a lot of people that find that that's actually the way more courageous decision to say no when you've paid the money, you've got yourself to the start line, you've said, you know what, this isn't for me. I would say that's way more courageous than doing it just because you've told everybody else. Second, we start living a life outside of our values, our virtues, what we believe in. We know that innately what we stand for. I think you end up in a bit of trouble. And sometimes it's worth working with a coach, as Michael will know, just to sometimes get our own values realigned. We can't always spot it. They creep up on us when we start going a little bit off center.
Yeah. And I've spent a lot of time with new clients that have come to me to work with me, or even a current athlete who set some new goal is, let's talk about why this is important to you. What's driving your desire to do this? And the minute I start hearing things, well, I just feel like if I don't do this, I'm not a real runner. I'm like, we're going to have to work on that to figure out what's going to get it. Cause that's not going to get you up in the morning at 5 a.m. when it's 30 degrees out and rainy.
Well, and the irony, all that is always the people who you're worried about doing that, their opinion doesn't matter. Any runner doesn't. Right? Any person who's a runner won't care, right? No. Like, we're all glad you're part of the community and you're running and you're doing whatever. And we don't really care, whatever Nick's goal is in his time, runners don't care.
No, we're too obsessed with our own performance to worry about yours. That's the truth.
Yeah.
It's like on golf, you miss a shot and you get really angry as if anyone else cares. They don't. They're too involved in their own games to be worrying about yours. I remember I had a client a long time ago on the coaching side who opened up the first meeting we had, and they told me about everything they'd achieved, and they had made their millionaire. I was, I don't need coaching, but I've been referred, and I'll have this conversation with you, and it was great. And I just said at the end, I know what you're worth in terms of financial, but your net worth is not your worth. So when you go, they're not going to write on your tombstone, this guy was worth X amount. Like, what do you stand for?
Yeah.
And I never really evaluated it in that way. It was kind of one of those moments that went, well, I don't really know. I've always defined myself by my work, by my net worth. And I was like, it's crazy. And that's how everyone else views you. How do you view yourself? And only yesterday, I had a coaching client, again, confidentiality won't give too much away, but they're working 18-hour days. And they'd got a letter from their CEO to say, you're doing a really great job. And we talked about values and they want to be a great parent to their kids and everything else. And I said, okay, so what would be more to you, getting a letter from your child saying you're the best mum ever, or a letter from your CEO? They literally started to cry. It was like, yeah, so if you're doing 18-hour days, you're currently out of alignment with what you're doing the work for. Because if your daughter's letter means more to you than your CEO's, you've got the wrong reward.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that moment to step back and go, yeah, why am I doing this?
They don't make hearses with luggage racks, right? That's, one of those things to tell the kids. If that doesn't align with that, right? If you're, if that's your goal to make the most money, and to your point, it lines up fine. But generally, I found it doesn't, right? But they get caught up, and I'm in a corporate world. There's a lot of people like that, and then I'm a little different.
Well, I'm as guilty as the next. I get the balance wrong. Michael will know we often teach the things we most need to learn, right? I need another coach to keep my alignment in place with the work-life balance piece, because I can get into my hobbies and my pursuits, and suddenly I realize I'm not spending enough time with the kids, and I need someone else sometimes to check on me and go, hey, Nick, listen to what you've just told me. You're doing all these events, doing all these races. You tell me you want to be a great dad. Like, something's got to give here. Otherwise, you'll look back and regret it. And so, okay.
So how do you see kind of, semi-pivoting, how do you see people balancing success at work and success in training and finding that balance while staying, we'll toss the term, staying meta, staying happy in life and everything. How have you seen it? Because you have this unique perspective of having been it. And then in recruiting, you see a lot of successful people moving around. How do you see them making that balance between work and athletic endeavors or other hobbies?
Firstly, I'd always recommend a coach. I think we can all value from someone else having a view on our lives. I think it was Michael, can't think of his surname now. I'll come to it in a minute, but a particular book, and he said that he called it the lamppost idea, where if everyone went outside and spoke to a lamppost for 30 seconds, we'd all be much happier people. And just talking our problems through out loud makes a difference. Not everyone, of course, has a coach. So in answer to your question, I think it still comes back to the why. I know it's, there's a cliche with the why these days. It's so overly used, but the cliches exist for a reason. I think if we're not really clear on our purpose and why we're doing something, then you're going to struggle to get that balance. For me, going under 10 hours for whatever reason in Ironman in 22 was really, really important. It was a goal that I just wouldn't be able, I was restless. I needed that off my list. So I worked all out and got it done. And it meant sacrifices. It meant 5-hour rides before work. That means I can't do the school run. That's not spending time with my kids. But there's also the trade-off of going, well, if I wasn't doing that thing and I was with my kids, am I fully present, knowing I'm frustrated that I haven't gone for this target? So it's always about balance. Sometimes, my wife said, you've achieved that target now, Nick. So don't go and sign up for another Ironman and try and do it again. Like now you've achieved it. You've scratched that itch. Now you need time with the kids again. And I think sometimes other people can help you with that. We're always on a pendulum. We're swinging one way or the other. I think the key is being aware where we are on that pendulum at any one moment. When I was doing that training for the sub 10, it was okay. I know I am on that pendulum. I know I'm sacrificing certain time for certain things, but it's not for an infinite amount of time. It's for a set period and for a set goal. And then when I've achieved that, the pendulum will swing the other way. Right now it's time to be dad again and start the coaching and do the school runs and give my wife a break and whatever. So I've tried to be always mindful of where I am on that pendulum. I try and make the same for the people that work for me in my teams, and try and give them work-life balance with their kids, whatever is important to them. And that involves communication, listening, and balance. It's not easy, though.
Well, I don't know if you heard this before, Nick, but I heard from somebody once that when you say yes, you say no to something else.
Yeah, I use that on some of my talks, and it works the other way as well. When you,
that might be where
I missed that. Okay, so you're using me. That's fine.
Yeah, it resonated with me because I was about the balance. But
I use that a lot. It's very powerful.
Very succinct, very succinctly said. We're like, if you do say yes, you say no to something else. And to your point, it's in there. If I say yes to the ride, say no to that, like it is. And so I think that, that balance and understanding the trade-offs is really a key point.
And it's a great tool for those that watch or listen to this who find themselves always saying yes and don't know how to get out of something. There's an engagement. We've all got certain friends or family where you go, oh, I just don't want to do that thing, but I've said yes to it now. I have to go along. If you've got a reason to say no, I can't say yes because if I say yes, I can't be with my son at football training, or I can't do this thing. It's a much easier way of saying no to something in a polite way as well.
Yeah.
And it puts everything into really good perspective as to what you're saying yes to. And it can work in reverse. And when you say no, what are you saying yes to? And when you say no to doing that Ironman under 10 hours, I'm saying yes to being a frustrated parent to my kids until I've got that itch scratched. So it's having awareness both ways. But a lot of us, human nature is we want to be kind and thoughtful and supportive. So we say yes, sometimes too much, at the detriment of ourselves often.
Yeah, and you said something very important, because I remember when we used to have, there was a full Ironman in Louisville, Kentucky, where I used to live, and we would offer homestays to, pros coming into town. And after we had the first homestay, it was just such an amazing experience to have, be that involved. And I remember talking to this pro, and I said, I'd love to do an Ironman one day. And he said, well, you got small kids. Now's not the time. And I ended up a year later, he ended up getting an entry for me. He's like, oh, I got you an entry. And I'm like, wait a minute. But what he taught me was you got to have the conversation. You mentioned this about communicating, and especially if, there are these things in your life, your various roles, whether it's, CEO, family person, dad, athlete. And I think where people struggle is especially type A plus people, is they can say yes to all those things at the same level. And it's really important to understand that there are trade-offs. There is something you're saying no to. And the key to that is communicating. And I remember sitting very vividly in the kitchen with my wife saying, are we going to do this? Because this is what it means. And the family's right or wrong, signing on to dad disappearing early in the morning, coming back, being tired all the time. And it really has to be, I mean, that was part of being the team. And these are the things I'm saying no to for this period of time. And once it's over, I'm back doing these other things.
I think there's a couple of things that pull out for me in that story. One is once you've done that thing, it opens up often new opportunities to do something else. The more we say yes, the more we can broaden our horizons and experience certain things. I would question maybe as well when you initially said no because of the kids. There are two terms. One is I call busy bravery, and I'm guilty of this regularly where I do, I might answer 1,000 emails to avoid that conversation I don't want to have. So I'm busy. I can't do it because I have all of this stuff to do. Really, we could find the time, but I call that busy bravery. It's not doing the thing that really moves the needle, but it's not that you're not doing anything. You're still really busy, just not doing the right thing. I think the other thing for me is I say that fear's greatest disguise is wisdom. So a bit of the idea of me writing the book, right? I'm fearful of how it will be received, whether it will come out any good or whatever. So I tell myself I need to wait till I've got that PhD. And that seems like that makes sense. That seems very wise to my mind. My mind's telling me to be prudent, to say, hey, stay safe. You don't need to do it yet. Don't expose yourself. Wait till you've got a PhD and then you'll be ready. And I think sometimes the voice in our heads disguises itself as something safe, as something that's looking after us. And actually it's preventing us from finding out who we can be and who we really are. And maybe in that, I don't know, you'll know, but maybe in that first response you gave where you said, no, I've got the kids, there's a little bit of, that sounds safe, that sounds wise, and maybe I'm going to look after myself, and it's, that's what I'm going to do. But actually, and credit to you, you came back to it a year later, albeit with a little bit of motivation from your colleague that got you the ticket, and went, no, I do want to do this thing. And I think to put it into payroll terms, there's something I call the fear tax. It's when we look back on our lives and go, how much does fear cost us? If you'd stayed in that safe space, you'd never have done that Ironman. You'd never know what you were capable of and how far you could push your body and all the training and things that came with it and all the stories that came with it. And you look back and go, I could have done that thing. And we all have it. We might call them, another word might be regrets, right? But we look back and go, where has fear cost us? I would have been looking back and going, I never wrote the books. I never got that PhD. And I'd be, I never needed it, but I don't want that conversation to come later. So I'm going to go for it now. And I think that's an interesting way sometimes to look back, and it compounds. That's the thing about fear. The more things you say no to because of the fear tax, eventually you look back and you realize there's loads of things you haven't done and you end up disappointed, and that's not how you want to feel. So I'd rather just give it a go, fail, that's fine. First attempt of learning, it wasn't for me, and do something else than not give it a go at all.
Yeah, so with that in mind, kind of getting near, what do you got planned for 2026? That begs the question. What do you got planned for the year?
We're always busy. I mean, the main focus for me is the two books. I've got a book called The Payroll Pivot, which is all about how we lead in the algorithmic age for payroll. I've never processed payroll in my life, but I've been immersed in this industry for 2 decades. And I hear payroll leaders talking about the industry all the time. I see it through a recruitment lens. I'm going to bring my perspective to the fore, hoping that to be published in sort of February, March time. Then I've got The Fear Equation, which is really about my story, really, of the things where I've had to overcome fear. There's some very personal stories in there. I had I've got a daughter who's come through anorexia nervosa. I've had my son that was choking, and various other stories. So I bring those to the page and talk about how fear has ruled my life and how it hasn't, and how I found potential on the other side, in the hope that it will hopefully inspire others to take action, because action is the hinge that opens the doorway to fear. So I'm hoping that will land. They're my biggest focus, because I've been wanting to do these for a long time. And rather than do one, Sean, I've signed up to do 2. So I'm doing 2 books in quick succession. Typical things, really.
An autographed copy of the payroll one. I want
I'll send it your way.
Really going to want the payroll one. He's going to dig on.
Well, the thing is, that we were talking about this before, that we've all been in recruiting. And I always said, payroll, HR can make a lot of mistakes as long as you don't screw up payroll. Don't ever screw up people getting paid. That's where the bar is. I think that's why payroll tends to be in the back and just say, let's just keep running this thing.
Well, and I mean, semi-pivot and tying it all together at the same time. The interesting thing working with compensation, where I spend more time in payroll, where Nick has spent most of his time, Michael, we talked about how they're converging, is both of those departments are generally notoriously slow for moving. And the fear of making change because of the length of line that could be outside your office,
oh, for sure,
is legit, right? Because it does matter to people. It is an interesting kind of fear equation example of, if you're in a department where, like on the dev side, I tell people we're not making enough mistakes, we're not going fast enough. And, if you go to payroll and be like, look, what I want, we're not making enough mistakes, they're going to be like, you can just leave now.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Yeah. You can go back to your little world over there where it's okay to make mistakes and just fix them in the next release. Right. Yeah. So I do think the fear, I am looking forward to that book, Nick. I think
I'm enjoying the writing of it for sure, and I'll definitely share a copy when it's ready. It's been an interesting journey even for me, looking back at some of the decisions I've made, rightly or wrongly, and when they've been in alignment with what I really believe and where they haven't been. And we make these decisions and we look back, but I want to look back without and pay the minimum amount of fear tax possible. That's kind of my ambition. So I'll throw myself into everything, and some things will work, some things won't. I guess for next year, I do a lot of talks as well. So I think I'm going to change I do a lot of talks on the future of payroll, and I want to immerse the fear equation into some of those talks, because I think fear is holding a lot of the industry back. Fear of AI, fear of how we, adopt to the new generation coming to the workforce. Fear of, everyone's fearful of the unknown, really. And in the algorithmic age, there's a lot of that going on. So I want to be a support network for those that are fearful of what's to come, and give them reassurance that, we evolve, we adopt, we adapt, and off we go. It's never binary of failure and success. There's always a middle ground in between, and that's where we need to try and focus our time and attention and get experts in.
This has been great. I will drop, all of Nick's miscellaneous stuff in there so people can, it is pile of podcasts, his other stuff, all in there. And for those that, maybe aren't from the triathlon space, you can then go Google Nick, but you can also find out how subtly he kept dropping the 10-hour mark, which for most people is Mike, were you sub 10?
No.
No, you don't need to say anymore.
I shot for sub 12, hit that. That was 11:30, and that was
that's solid.
That was
very
good.
Impressive. It's still very. Hey, look, listen. Just getting through an Ironman, no matter how you are, I have as much respect for those that take 17 hours. I've been on the course for that long. The pros get around in 8 hours. I mean, it almost feels like that's easy. They're only on the course for half the amount of time.
Yeah.
They're phenomenal athletes.
There's more nutrition. There's more stuff too. Things we don't want to talk about, like chafe. There's stuff.
Yeah, there is stuff.
That long. This has been great. Thanks so much, Nick. I really appreciate it.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.